Hey, you guys, I'm so excited. Thanks for showing up again. Last week was incredible. It was our kickoff to this new leadership series, and I'm so excited for week 2. So grateful that you guys took the time. So last week, as you know, we were building that first foundational block. How did I get here? I started this business for myself to make money for myself. And what? Now I have to lead people and teach them to do the same thing. I'm confused. How did I get here? And we talked about, how do we really launch ourselves into that role well? So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to get our house in order. What does that really mean? We talked about the first step is you got to show up and do the work for your own business first. Set that example. If you're not doing that, really work on that. That's number one priority. Second, you have to know where you're going, and you have to be incredibly loud and proud about it, because your team is going to not know where they're going yet as they join you. And so you are going to know your direction so that they have someone to follow and be excited about. And then you really have to build connections with your team. I think this is kind of the hard part, because you're thinking, I just started a business for myself, and now I'm having to build connections and lead people. Some people, that's very natural. All of our yellows, we know who you are. I see some of you on this call. You love this part of the business, I'm sure. But some people, it's just not as natural. So you have to be intentional. And we talked about that. This week, what we're going to do is build another block of your foundation and start to talk about your leadership style. What's your leadership style? And not only that, but we're really going to talk about leadership style from the perspective of emotional leadership, emotional, intelligent leadership. And you may be completely familiar with the phrase emotional intelligence, and you may not be. Really what it means is being intelligent when it comes to understanding the complex dynamic of a human being when it comes to emotions, and understanding and also just accepting that emotions are a part of leadership, and how mood and mindset really dictate more than we even want to acknowledge. And I think we've all seen that to be true. And so the leadership styles that we're going to talk about tonight are really leadership styles from that perspective of emotional intelligence leadership. All right. So I'm so excited, because once you really dial into your style, and you'll probably find one is dominant, and you'll probably find that you have little mixes of all the other ones. Well, that's intentional, because we are emotional human beings, and emotions are not always the same. They're different every second, every hour, every day, every week, every month. And so you are going to lead differently, but you probably have a dominant style. So I'm really excited to see, as we go throughout the night, whose style and who relates to what style. So I just think it's so important when you really dial into that and then start to acknowledge your strengths. I know a lot of you here expressed last week just feeling inadequate. Like, how did I get here? I'm not ready for this. Or I want to be ready, but I have no idea how. Well, I'm so glad you're here, because that was the intention. We want to equip our leaders so that we can have a layered leadership approach to our organizations, so that you do feel equipped. And part of being equipped is embracing and acknowledging your natural God-given abilities, because he planted them inside of you, because the whole world needed to hear and receive what you have been gifted by God. Okay. And so the more you dial into that, it just really hones in your leadership style. Are you guys ready? Drop a one in the chat if you're super ready to hear about the different styles. Yes. Okay, let's go. So the first one, the visionary leader. If I had to describe or use a phrase to describe a visionary leader, I would say it's come with me. Come with me. So they're going to tell their teams where they're headed. They're going to know where they're going and be loud about it. And they're going to know where the team is going and be loud about it. They're going to encourage initiative. And they're going to be empathetic. So right off the bat, you might be thinking, I'm not very good at that, or I do that really well, or, oh, I think of this leader when I think of that. Well, let's talk about when you should maybe use this style. Is there a more appropriate time to use these styles than others? 100%. So we're going to talk about that. Very, very important with visionary leaders when you need to establish a new direction. Or maybe since you're new to leadership, you're thinking to yourself, I don't think I've ever shouted out a direction. I just teach them how to do the work. Well, guess what? If you're having success without casting vision, how much more success are you going to have when you cast a vision? So visionary leadership is so important when establishing a new direction. And if you don't know that direction, talk to your upline. Say, I want to know where I'm going. I want to know where my team's going. Or maybe you do know. But if you need help establishing that vision, talk to your upline. I'm sure they know. It's great for teams that are being rebuilt too. I am in a rebuilding season right now. It happens all the time, right? So kind of shouting out that direction and really rallying people so that you lock arms and go together. I think it's great when you've got a new product or a service or maybe a procedure, like our new cold brew just came out. You're going to cast a vision for what we can do with this new product and what it can do for our businesses. Okay. So if this isn't something that feels very natural to you, how can you develop it? Well, the first thing you really probably should look at is, how are your communication and presentation skills? Have people told you, gosh, you're a great teacher. I just love it when you speak or on a Zoom. You just really speak to me. If you've heard that, you probably have a really natural gifting for this. But if you don't have a natural gifting for it, guess what? We're all jealous of the actual gift, the other gifting you have, because we don't have it. So improve your communication and presentation skills. If you're going to be a visionary, but you might know it up here, but if you can't communicate it here or from here, it may get missed. All right. Increase your expertise. What do I mean by that? Well, when it comes to a vision, do you know enough about what it is that you're casting a vision about? Do you know about the product, or are you just going to rely on your upline to send you all the deets? I don't need to get on the family call. I don't need to get on the leadership call because I already know what they're going to talk about. I'll just wait till Kelly sends me the summary. Okay, you're a leader now. Guess what? You can't do that anymore. Take ownership and become an expertise with what it is you're casting vision about. I think it's really important, if you're not doing this already, take time daily to cast vision for yourself. How many of you journal or cast vision every day? And you know what? I even think looking at your chart every day and doing your volume, that's casting vision, because you got it in front of you and it helps you know where you're going. It's your roadmap for your vision, right? And do you share it with your team? Like, are you casting vision for yourself and your team? One of the things that Jenna, one of the leaders in Freedom, talked about, she shared on a leadership call, that in her team chat, what she likes to do, and she talked about this, I think, on our team huddle, when she went double diamond. She said, one of the things I like to do is I like to put the daily goal for our volume. Like, what do we need to reach a certain level by the end of the month? And let's divide that by 30 days. That's the volume we need per day. So every day she'd shout it out. Guess what? You're casting vision. It might seem like you're setting a goal, but every time you set a goal, it's probably because you're trying to get somewhere, right? So take time daily to do that. Reflect on your level of self-confidence. Think about it. Do I struggle with self-confidence? Drop a one. Drop a one, people. Do you struggle with self-confidence? This is a hard one to dig into, but I think sometimes there are people who are very natural visionary leaders, but because of something or someone in their lives, they lack confidence. So if that's you, it's fine. We've all been there. There are times where my confidence feels this big, even though it may not seem like it. How do you fix that? Well, I think, first of all, you got to acknowledge if that's an issue. And then second of all, I would pray about it, speak with people that you trust in your life about it, but just read about it. Read scripture about who God says you are, and then believe it. Read books about your worthiness as a human being. And if you need recommendations or if you need other sources or resources, talk to your upline. Freedom Legacy has the best leaders in the entire organization. Hands down. Elite Legacy. Amazing. You've got a lot of resources. How many of you kind of relate to this, or you're thinking of a person already? Yes. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Cool. All right. You guys ready for number 2? Number 2 is the coaching leader. So they could be best summed up with this phrase of, hey, try this, try this. So they help people connect value to their goals. They are the encouraging and empathetic people, okay? So connecting value to their goals, meaning, hey, I know you said that you could really, a monthly income of $600 would be amazing right now because it would pay for your daycare. So guess what? They're going to remind you of that. Oh my gosh, you just signed your 4th distributor this month. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that means? If you fast start them all, and you get really excited and you kind of tie that value, that emotional hook. Okay. So when do you use this? And you might be thinking, why wouldn't you use this all the time? Of all the styles, I would say that this one is used on the daily all the time. But there are certain situations where I would use other ones. But let's talk about this one. When do you use it? A new distributor, right? You're building that foundation. Maybe you have a distributor who's just a little bit lost and they want help. What I will say, there's a caveat to this. When the distributor is responsive and willing to collaborate, this works. When they are not, this does not work. You could be the best mentor, the best coach, the best teacher in the world. But if they do not want it, and if they do not show up for themselves, you just can't do anything about it. Okay? And so I'm here to tell you that you can bless and release. Okay? Bless and release. Katie Rogers, I think it was the kickoff of 2021. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was a team huddle. But she just spit the most beautiful truth bombs about how we can get so caught up in how much we love and our team, and how when we are relational and open ourselves up, we care deeply about people. But when they stop showing up, sometimes you have, and it's been, a repeated absence. You just got to bless and release and keep going. And if they come back, awesome. And if they don't, it's okay. It doesn't mean you can't still be friends and have a great relationship. Okay? So this is only really to be used when you have people that are willing to reciprocate and collaborate back with you. Okay? I also think this is really good for people who their natural learning style is very hands-on. So they're smart enough that they want to give it a go, but they want you to work alongside them. Okay? So if this is not natural for you, how do you develop being a coach? Well, again, it comes down to communication. Okay? You got to make sure your communication skills are up to par. How do you improve your communication skills? Just like I said, show up and volunteer for a power hour. When they're asking for volunteers to host a power hour, do it and do it scared. Guess what? You're stepping out of your comfort zone and you're leading something and communicating something even when you're scared. Practice. Practice, practice. Practice sometimes means showing up when it's scary. Guess what? You're going to become a really good coach if you constantly step out of your comfort zone and try something new. Improve your communication skills. I also think there are books and YouTube videos. One of the things I used to do when I was, I have a special certification to be it's called a CPLP, I believe, unless they changed it. But it's a special certification where I can go into companies and I help them set up learning and development structures. And, the number one question I get asked is, you don't have a college degree. I went to college, but I didn't get a degree. Okay. And they always say, how did you get to this level in your career without college? Same thing I always say. I graduated from YouTube University. You know what I did? I went and watched Mel Robbins speak. I went and watched some of my favorite pastors. How did they inspire me beyond just listening that day? What did they do that made me want to go implement it right away? And I made notes. Okay. I improved my communication skills by a lot of mimicking. Take time to know your people. Okay. Take time to know your people. You're going to coach and mentor and love on them and communicate with them better if you understand who they are and how they receive communication. I love our color personality test or Enneagram or whatever you like to use, because I think that helps you understand that part of them. So the more you understand, the better you can relate. Okay. Read books on how to coach and mentor. And lastly, ask your upline. Talk about success leaves clues. When I enrolled with Katie, I realized quickly that I needed to think about this in two different ways. Okay. Two paths. One, how do I do the work to make money? Two, how is she training me? Because I know I'm going to need to do that with somebody else. It's just the way my mind works because I was a corporate trainer, right? So I'm always thinking like that. Katie was an amazing and continues to be an amazing resource for me, and she does it freely. Okay? Because she's a coach. All right. How many of you relate to this? Or how many of you are thinking about people? Yes. Love that. Okay. The next one. Affiliative leader. What does this even mean? This could be summarized by people come first. I like to call this the yellow hippie. This is the yellow personality. I think of people who promote harmony in the team. They emphasize emotional connections and how important that is. They encourage inclusion. They're going to see the people that are outliers. Okay. And they're going to bring them into the fold. These are the teams, these are the leaders that when there's Spirit Week and different themes and dress up, they're going to have the craziest team, hands down. Okay, so what does this look like? And when should you use it? When to use it? It's okay. Now I know that I paint a very lovey-dovey picture, but think about it. Inclusion, harmony. This is really good for conflict resolution or tension. It's really good when you're adopting a downline. I haven't had to, I guess I sort of have had to do that with a little bit, but probably not as much as some of you. And if you've never had this happen yet, it might. Maybe your emerald leader walks away and has a very successful team. Guess what? You just adopted a downline. And guess what happens during those times? You got to build trust. You got to create harmony, and you got to create inclusion. It's so hard when something like that happens. Maybe your team needs some innovation through a stressful time. COVID. Hello. I mean, how crazy. We had teams that went from moms who now had kids at home and couldn't get anything done, or they had to, their job wouldn't let them work remote. I mean, it was just crazy. So it's a great time to break this out when you need to, I call it create a safe space. A place of trust, a place where everybody feels included. It's a safe place to come and be who you are as you are. Okay. If this isn't natural for you, how do you develop it? Well, I know this seems counterintuitive, but part of it is that you have to get comfortable with hard conversations. I think sometimes, we think of this as, oh, this sounds like a really cool leadership style. Well, what this leadership style usually lacks is the ability to have difficult conversations, because they want to make people feel included and they want to make people feel safe and create harmony. You cannot have harmony with tension. Okay. You cannot have harmony when there's discord. And so if you love your team enough and you love the individuals enough, you need to learn how to have difficult conversations. It sucks, but it's just part of life. And what really helped me flip, I always thought I was afraid of conflict. I'm not afraid of conflict at all. What I was afraid of is hurting people's feelings. But I had to realize as a leader in my professional career, and then here, is that it's a loving thing to do, to course correct or to resolve problems. It's loving. What isn't loving is to ignore it. It's just not healthy. So get comfortable with that. How do you do that? Read books on emotional and relational intelligence. Talk to your upline. How do you resolve this? What would you do? I think lastly, practicing gratitude is huge. Practice gratitude if you need to develop a more natural affiliative leader approach. Because people who are in tune to their teams and creating inclusion and harmony, I think are really grateful. Practice gratitude. All right. How many of my yellows are like, oh, that's me? Right? Yes. Sorry, you guys. My hair is like insane. I've got a fan blowing. Do I look like Farrah? I'm just kidding. All right, let's move on. The Democratic leader. The Democratic leader this leadership style is probably one of my favorite when I think about a favorite boss. I think of them as a Democratic leader. So what are they and what does that look like? Well, they can be described as somebody who would say, well, what do you think? How many of you have ever worked for someone? Drop a 2. I'm curious. Drop a 2 in the chat if you've worked for someone who, when you ask them the question, they'll go, well, what do you think? Or a friend that does that to you. Here's what they do. They focus on collaboration. They seek input, and they listen a lot, and they direct less. This sounds super healthy, right? So why wouldn't we always use this? Well, let's talk about when we would use this. When you need to build consensus, this is great. Okay? When you need or want input, this is great. But when it's not good is you do not want to use this approach with inexperienced people. You want to use this approach with a strong team who is motivated, knowledgeable, and capable. So here's an example, okay? Because I think this one's a little bit harder to think of an application. So I used to use the It Works Connect app. I still do, but I used to use it pretty religiously. Some changes happened that kind of interrupted my flow and how I did things, and it wasn't so easy to use anymore. So I took the approach of the Democratic leader, and I went to some of the people in my team, not the people who don't use the app, the inexperienced people, but the people who I knew were using the app. Okay. I went to them and said, here's my issue. Are you experiencing it? What did you do to fix it? Like, what was your solution? What are you using instead? I wanted input, and then I just listened. Okay. But I went to the people who were knowledgeable about the app. Okay. So it's really a great skill. I think the Democratic leader is going to help you serve the purpose of what this training is all about. And that is creating layered leadership in you and your teams. How do you make leaders? Okay. I think when leaders start to show themselves and identify themselves, be democratic with them, give them opportunities to help build consensus, to provide input, to be solution-minded. I think this is so important. So how do you develop this if this is not something you're naturally good at? You know who's not naturally good at this? Are people who like control. And if you like control, welcome to my party. I love control. It's something I have to submit to the Lord and pray about daily. So when you don't release control, unfortunately, you are robbing your team the opportunity of shining really bright. Okay. So how do you develop it? You have to acknowledge whether or not this is something that you're good at or not. If there's a problem in your team or a problem with maybe, how a perfect example is, oh my gosh, when the gummies went on back order because they were selling out like crazy. That's a problem. Maybe you've got customers that are upset. Go to your experienced team and your leaders and say, all right, we're going to have to walk our new people through how to have these conversations and how to manage customer expectation. How can we do that? And just, it's like a round table. It's collaborative. Okay. So exercise that activity with your team. If you struggle with decision-making, you got to work on that. And all I really know, I'm not the expert on how to fix that, but I do know that people who struggle to make decisions, which I sometimes do too, people who struggle to make decisions struggle for a reason. Somewhere along the way, they felt that their input and decision, maybe it was devalued. Maybe it was never allowed. I don't know. But whatever the reason is, I would spend some time praying and reflecting and just see what happens. See what happens. Mostly, you got to improve those active listening skills. Democratic leaders listen a lot. So I had this amazing leader that I worked with at my last job in Illinois. And I learned something from him without him having to tell me. I watched him because I was always impressed by him. We would go into these big collaborative meetings about maybe a new product launch or, some kind of new system we were rolling out to our employees. And I was always involved from the get-go because I needed to make sure we taught them. And how do we roll that out? And I would just watch him, okay? And he would sit with his arms kind of like, he would take up space. So he'd kind of sit like this, intensely listening. He would never be the first to speak. He was usually the last. He just listened and listened and listened. He was humble. If you find that you're the first to speak, I struggle with this. Maybe work on your humility, because sometimes it's not the answer that you have that's the best. Sometimes it's going to come from that person in the room. And if you're always first to speak and not listen, you're robbing them the opportunity of just surprising you and coming up with this amazing solution. Okay. So improve your active listening skills. Tons of books, tons of YouTube videos. It's all over the place. But one of the biggest things you can do to really, really improve and prepare yourselves for when you need to bust out that Democratic leader. All right. You guys doing okay? You doing good? Your chat is blowing up. If I look at it, I'm going to get distracted. Okay. The pace setting leader. Now, I have to be honest. When I started writing this out and reading about this, I immediately thought of Katie Rogers. Oh, she's going to kill me for name dropping her. Okay. The pace setting leader is do as I do and do it now. Whoa, that sounds intense, right? Oh, but wait. Pace setting leaders are vital to any company, and they're vital to your team. You got to have pace setters. Okay. So they focus on performance and achieving goals. Usually pace setting leaders are red. They expect excellence from their team, and they lead from the front. I mean, it's just that simple. Okay. So when do you use this? When you need results quickly, during promotion seasons or bonus seasons, you not only want to succeed, but you want your team to hit these life-changing incentives, right? So, it's great to bust out this in those times. Your team always needs to see you show up. And I'm going to drop something here that I say just as much for myself as I do to any of you. Your team needs to see that you can do it too. So if you've ever been frustrated by the lack of effort or consistency or dedication from your team, they're probably following your lead. Not always. Let's be real. Not always. But if it's consistent and you feel that way a lot, check yourself before you wreck yourself and ask yourself, am I setting the pace? Because you're always setting a pace, but I don't know if it's the pace you want. So you have to really think about that. When new things are introduced, help build excitement. The pace setters are great at this. So Cold Brew just launching. The pace setters are out there. They were posting about this as soon as they could. They probably already got orders in like crazy, and they're building that excitement and they're talking to their teams about it. So fun. So fun. So how do you develop it? Because this is not natural for a lot of people probably, right? So how do you develop that? You got to be consistent about the behaviors that are going to get you the results. So it's just like week 1 where we talked about getting your house in order. The first thing you got to fix is, are you showing up for your own business? You got to be consistent about the work. You got to recognize and motivate your team. If you're trying to rally them, or, you are setting a pace and they're trying to match you and they're doing a darn good job, shout them out. Recognize and reward behavior that you want. And then being a pace setter one of the things that can happen is you can lack You have to be careful to not leave people behind. You want to lead, you don't want to leave. So improve your training and make sure that you are training them so well that when you're up front and you're running your business and you're excited about your momentum, that you know you did everything to equip them to do the same thing. And if they choose not to use the tools you gave them, that's one thing. But make sure if you're going to be a pace setter, don't leave people behind. Okay? How many of you now know why I think of Katie Rogers? Oh, got to have a pace setter. All right. So lastly, the last and sixth leadership style is the commanding leader. Do what I tell you. I loved this picture. They focus on rules. There's not really room for collaboration, and it has to be done this way. You're probably going, ooh, that sucks. Why would I want that? Well, there actually is a time and place for this. So let's talk about that. When do you use this? Well, think about it. Think about things in our business that are black and white. And you probably should be using the commanding leadership style. Compliance related issues. It's not like, if you don't want to post an income disclosure statement with that post, you don't have to. It's fine. It's just not like that, right? It's a yes or no. And if you choose no, bye-bye, right? It's black or white. Okay. When you're training about products or company policies or answering questions, or course correcting, because maybe they're breaking those or not following the rules or being misleading, it's black and white. There's no gray. So you have to say, do what I tell you. I mean, you're not going to say that, but you come at it with that approach. When somebody maybe comes to you and talks to you about leaving or maybe joining a competitor, unfortunately, if it goes against our distributor agreement that we sign or company policy, you have to have some tough conversations. And they don't get a choice. It is you choose this or you choose this. So it's do as I tell you. It's like a parent. They set boundaries and rules to keep you safe. And commanding leaders do the same thing. So this is a hard one for people. Like yellows, this is probably the least natural thing for them. So how do you develop it? You got to get comfortable with conflict. And again, realize that conflict is not necessarily about conflict. It's just communication. That's all this is in this instance, is just communication. Okay. You got to know your black and white areas. As a leader, now that you have a team, do you take ownership of understanding rules and regulations and policies and products? Do you know that? Or do you just kind of hope that somebody will answer your questions? You're a leader now. Own that. Make sure you know the black and white areas. The good news is you're really going to use this sparingly. It's not something you're probably going to bust out on a daily basis. Okay. So if it's not as natural to you, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I would say, again, just like we talked about conflict before, spend some time thinking about why you're so afraid of it. Okay. And just remember, just because it's the way you perceive communication is like this, maybe you perceive it as conflict, but the other person may not. They'd be like, oh, thank goodness you told me. I'm so glad. So when another distributor comes to you and says, okay, I love you. I don't want to be like a negative Nancy, but you cannot post a copy of your email confirmation with your paycheck. Even though you blurred the amounts, you cannot post that. It's against policy and procedure. And it's actually something we are heavily monitored for. It's not an It Works thing. I mean, it's not that they don't want us to tell everybody. It's that the regulations and rules and laws that we have to abide by that monitor us tell us we can't. So I need you to know that I love you enough to tell you that. And I love the company enough and I love my team enough to say that. It's not conflict. It's love. Setting boundaries and enforcing rules that keep you safe is loving. Okay. So how many feel like they have identified a style that's probably their dominant style, but also realize the beauty of all these styles is that they're so interchangeable? And they should be. Humans are complex. Emotions change from second to minute to hour to day to week to month to year. So sometimes you can pull a different style out of your back pocket based on the person and the situation. It's so beautiful. That's why I love emotional intelligence, because I think it's a great way to lead your teams, especially in this space in network marketing. So here's what I want to challenge you to do. I'm going to give you a list of books that I think really help with some of these topics we've been talking about. First one is These Styles and This Emotional Intelligence Approach to Leadership. I got it from a book I read years ago called Primal Leadership. Was it years ago? I don't remember. But it's by Daniel Goleman. If you type in Primal Leadership, I think it's the only book with that title. If you are new to emotional intelligence or relating to people through emotion and relationship, there's two books that changed my world. Emotional Intelligence by Travis Bradberry and Jan Greaves. Relational Intelligence by Darius Daniels is still on my top 5 books that I've ever read. A really good one to kind of help with coaching and difficulty in conversations is a book called Crucial Conversations. I don't remember the author, but I didn't have time to look before we started. And then anything by Patrick Lencioni is really great when it comes to the 5 dysfunctions of a team is really good. I think those would be some great books and great resources for you to kind of check out if you need or want to enhance any of those areas when it comes to your leadership style. So I want to challenge you. I got this acronym from Melissa, ACT, Apply, Change, and Teach. But I want to add my own spin on it a little bit. I think you need to take some time to reflect. We gave you a lot of information tonight. I want you to reflect and say, all right, Lord, or go to your upline and say, Kelly gave us this. I thought it was super valuable, but I'm struggling with this. Or, reflect, journal, pray, read your Bible, ask the Lord for guidance on how to be a better leader and help you identify maybe something that you need to apply, change, or teach. Okay. So I want you to just pick one thing that you can apply right away. I want you to pick one thing that you identified that you either need to change or tweak. And I want you to pick one thing that you can teach someone right now that is on your team that you know could maybe use something. And guess what happens when you teach, guys? I'm convinced this is why I went into this profession. You become a better student because you're reinforcing what you're learning. You're repeating it over and over again. So you really become an expert, but you also just become a really good leader. Okay. You guys, this has been amazing. How many of you feel like you've had some light bulb moments or just had some really good realizations? Yay. Okay. I'm a little disappointed because I forgot to ask you in the beginning, what's one thing that you are super proud of when it comes to your leadership today? So drop that in the chat right now. I want to know. Because here's what I will leave you with. Leadership is nothing to do with your paycheck, your rank, your title. It's about stepping into the gap. It's about seeing a gap, stepping into it, showing up for your team, for your business, for your family. It is about how you present yourself. You don't have to have a team to be a leader. You'll get one because you're showing up like a leader. Being a leader is the ability to embrace what you're naturally gifted at, know what you need to work on, and identifying those things in others and taking them to where they need to go. And guess what? You're here. Showing up on these trainings, you're a leader. Leaders are willing to learn till the day they die. So I'm really proud of you. And not enough people are dropping what they're proud of. So you need to work on that, okay? Because God put something inside of you, like I said, the whole world needs. Don't hide it under a bushel. Let your light shine because there's something in you that either your team needs, your family needs, or strangers that you haven't met yet need, Okay. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Next Thursday is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see you. And those of you who are on the Power Hour in the morning, I will see you then. Bye.